Hello, Belinda. Thank you so much for inviting me. Well, my name is Mary Rodwell and I live in Australia, and I am the principal of the Australian Close Encounter Resource Network that I created in 1997 simply because people were coming to me with what they believed were extraterrestrial encounters or feeling they were being taken up onto spacecraft and not only interacting with the beings, but feeling like this interaction had changed them in very important ways. My background is in nursing and midwifery. 25 years ago, I became a counselor and learned hypnosis, which has been extremely useful in this particular work because, in terms of emotions, human emotions, whether the emotions are brought about by human interactions with one another, or whether they're brought about by having experiences that create those emotions with a different kind of reality, the emotions are still the same. Whether it's fear of something happening on this planet or fear of something happening on a spacecraft is exactly the same kind of fear. And fear of the unknown is exactly the same. Or other feelings that you will get as a human, you will also experience in the same way with this kind of experience. So that is the background of who I am. From the time that I started being involved in the Australian ACERN, which is my organization, over 2,000 individuals have contacted me from around the globe. And what is fascinating is they're not just talking about their sightings or things like that. They're talking about the fact that my information makes a great deal of sense to them because it's not about saying, well, I've been just taken up on a spacecraft, maybe my family has, or I've woken up with marks or strange marks on my body, for example, all the things that we connect to what we call an encounter, or some call it an abduction, but not every person believes it's actually against their will. So I'm very reluctant to use that word. But what they are saying is that from that experience, they change as individuals. And the transformative side of encounters was hugely interesting for me because from that also what I gathered and understood was the children of these individuals were also highly aware, often talking about quite consciously being on craft, but also talking about these beings not as alien to them, but actually as part of their family. Now, that is a very strange concept to most of those in the public that think that this is a scary experience and people are frightened about going on to craft and that these are horrible beings that take them against their will. That was not what I was what I was hearing. What I was hearing often was the children told me, and many of the children told their parents, that these beings were family, that they felt like they were more their family than their human family. And this really was the start of me understanding what I call the star children phenomena. This is why I get so many emails, I think, from around the world, Belinda, is because people do connect to some of this questionnaire that I actually put together, not from looking at other questionnaires. It came together because of the numbers of people that were saying the same thing, the same patterns of experience, as I call it. Such things as they felt more connected to the stars than they did to Earth. They felt very different to everyone else, sometimes very different to their brothers and sisters or their parents, for example. They felt that there was nobody quite the same as they were. They also found that they struggled with conventional religion or conventional ways of understanding spirituality. It was more of a universal kind of spirituality that made more sense to them. They would feel like they've got something to do here. They've come with a job to do, a kind of mission or kind of purpose, if you like. They often said that their body didn't feel okay, that it often felt too heavy. They couldn't quite understand why they were not comfortable in their human body. And also, many felt very connected to living things, all living things, from animals to plants. And I have a little boy who at 8 told me he communicates with animals and that he's here to help people understand their connection to all living things, including how important animals are, for example. Many of them are passionate about the ecology of the planet, caring for it, and feel it's very, very important to take care of it. There is a real sense of sadness about what humanity is doing to the planet, for example. The other thing with all of that is they have often an impulse maybe to draw unusual symbols or pictures, or even the urge to draw strange beings that don't look human, or unusual faces of beings. Sometimes they will say to me they've had the urge to speak in a strange language, which feels very familiar to them, very normal to them, and they don't know what this language is, but it feels really good to speak it. Some say they feel constantly watched or observed, like they, there's a feeling like there is something around in the non-physical realm watching them. Even feeling like they've been touched when they've been sleeping. And often that's about being visited, where they'll say that they felt something touching them and a presence in the room, if you like. They sometimes will say that they feel like a dual consciousness, like part of them is human, part of them is not human, or even sharing their physical body, their human container, sometimes with another presence. Like you would see sometimes in a trance state, a medium will bring in another entity to speak, and they sort of vacate, a similar kind of feeling to that. Sometimes they feel like they can be in two places at once, a kind of bilocation. And the other thing is almost a sense of another entity or being or presence talking to them. This isn't like mind talk that we hear and we know is ourselves. This is like another consciousness telling you things, explaining things, or guiding you in some way. Some believe these are guides or spirits. Some know that they're a non-human entity, like a tall blue being, or they'll say they're not necessarily looking human or anything like that. What I have noticed, many seem to be drawn to a holistic diet or a vegetarian diet, or they're very careful about what they eat. And many of them go off eating various kinds of foods, particularly meats and this kind of thing. They may believe they have objects implanted in their body, implants as they're called, not necessarily feeling they're bad. One young lady who does wonderful artistic drawings explained that she felt she had an implant in her arm, which helped her translate the concepts that she was getting onto a piece of paper. So it was actually assisting her. They will talk about maybe having other children in another place, like up on the craft, hybrid children. They seem to know that that is also part of their mandate on this planet, and feeling a strong connection to another planet or another place, for example. So those are some of the feelings that they may experience. Well, the other things I call awareness, and these are aware of healing abilities. A lot of the children are quite aware, even at a young age, that they can do healing. And I've had children tell me at 7 or 8, they've automatically gone to one of their parents if their parents were unwell or distressed, and known where to put their hands and feel an energy, and their parent has felt better afterwards. So there's a natural understanding of how frequency and healing works. Many of them see colors and auras around people. They will say, interesting things like, I see you in a cloud of purple or something or other, or many colors, rainbow colors. One young boy told me that he sees energy around plants as well as around animals. So they seem to be able to see a broader spectrum of the visual spectrum from, ultraviolet right across, or infrared, should I say, right across the spectrum, which is fascinating. Sometimes they'll have what they call dreams. And these dreams, I believe, are not dreams in the sense that you forget them a few minutes after you've had the dream, like most normal dreams. These are dreams that are very powerful and they stay with them for many years. And in these dreams, they may feel they've been on a spacecraft, learning things, being shown things, sometimes having medical examinations and what have you. And my hypothesis with that is if it's something they've remembered for a long time, then it's most likely not a dream, because when the beings come and you are taken somewhere, they put you into a trance state, which feels like a dream. But the difference is that you remember it, and it often you can have flashbacks afterwards about this experience. So the only reason it seems like a dream is because you're in a trance. The other things that are very important here is that they will feel they've been taught things on the craft. And one of the little boys who has conscious memory told me that he learns to use his brain waves, is the way he calls his consciousness, to create things with other children like him. He said often some of my school friends are on the craft with me and we're learning things, how to move things in the air with our minds. He said, and some of the children they're not quite human. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, their eyes often are bigger, are different. So he was aware they were not human children, also learning these kinds of things. They're also aware of different people having different energies and not trusting some person because of an energy they feel from them. And these children are hypersensitive to other people's illnesses or whether they're unhappy or they're angry. And they can pick this up. And often they mix up the energies they're feeling with their own because they don't know the difference. So if they're close to their mother, they will often pick up mother's energies as well. And interestingly, they have to learn the difference between what's mum's, when mum's upset, that doesn't mean they have to be upset because they're so empathic and so tuned into emotions and feelings, for example. They have out-of-body experiences, feelings about going through walls, windows, and being sometimes taken somewhere. So when they have an experience, it isn't always the physical body that goes. Sometimes it's their astral body that goes. But if they go through in a physical way, they will almost feel themselves being pulled through solid objects as though their body has been manipulated in a different kind of frequency so that can happen. They may be taken, as they say, to their home, which is where their family is and where there's huge emotion from them when they articulate to me what that home world is like and their family is like. They can get very emotional, just like this little 8-year-old when he described his family are mantid beings, which are tall insect-like beings called the manta because they're like a mantis insect in look, only they're about, anything from 9 feet tall. And although they look unusual and strange, many people have a very strong connection to them and say they're family because that is their star family. And this little 8-year-old boy got quite emotional when he talked about his mantid family, which is extremely strange to us, but actually quite normal to him, for example. I also believe that Hollywood is feeding the public information, particularly in the sci-fi movies, for example, about certain realities that they are told about. I do know that Close Encounters of the Third Kind that was so well known across the world, that is supposed to be actually a real event that was put into a Hollywood movie. That's the consensus about that particular movie, that it really did happen. But getting back to some of the beings, I do believe Hollywood is certainly preparing us for accepting many different forms. And the insect-like beings, although they look strange, many people around the world see them, and they are meant to be very ancient, very wise, and master geneticists, so I believe. But this little boy of 8 had no fear whatsoever. And what was fascinating was another gentleman in England who I was corresponding with at the time also spoke about the mantid beings as being his family. Simon Parks in England, a town councillor, admitted to me that that's how he felt about the mantid beings, that they were very much his family. And, you know, some of the things the little boy was telling me about this mantid being, the sounds they make, etc., and the feeling of being so connected was absolutely fascinating because it was identical. And I've even got a 7-year-old girl who talked about the mantid beings, and she made the identical clicking kind of trilling sound that the mantid make because she knew of the mantid as well. So these are, you know, I'm getting this around the globe, very similar reports about different intelligences visiting us, which gives it a lot of credibility in my book when, you know, they have no connection to one another. Yes, well, the thing is with the greys, everybody wants to think that they're the only ones or believes they're the only ones that are coming to the planet and there's only one type. One lady told me she was aware of 165 species of grey, for example. So it's almost like taking one human off the planet and saying to the galactic community, well, this is what all humans are like. It is a nonsense. There are many different forms of grey. Some are obviously a lot more aware than others. There are, and with many different agendas, I believe, but there's tall blue beings, you're quite right. There are energy beings, light beings. There are many forms of humanoids coming from different star systems, for example. I've even come across some kind of plant type beings as well, with one young lady drawing these plant type beings. In fact, crystalline beings are another one, a kind of silicon crystalline intelligence and what have you. So to be honest, I think the forms can be as varied as there are different types of human beings. So we've got to get over this fact that, you know, there may be only one intelligence out there that's visiting us, when in fact there's tall whites, there's a multitude, I suspect. And I think the governments, from what I remember, when retired Command Sergeant Robert Dean, who's in his 80s now, and saw the shape cosmic top secret articles and what the military knew, I think they were mentioning about 57 different species, but I think there's probably many, many more than that. So, you know, we've got to really expand our horizons. There's a vast cosmos out there of many, many life planets that could be life-giving. And we've got to get over the fact that, you know, this nonsense that there's only maybe a few that may even reach us, when I think it's absolutely, it could be a matrix of that, and those interdimensionally as well. So, you know, in terms of, so why that leads into this one quite well, in the sense as many of them that feel they're star seeds or star children feel they've had lifetimes on other planets. Not sometimes they'll remember lifetimes on Earth, but they will also remember lifetimes on other planets. And even some have memories prior to incarnating into human form. And that's been something that's come up more and more, where somebody would say to me, but Mary, I remember just before I came into my mother's body, into the fetus she was carrying, and I was able to tell my parents things about what happened prior to when I was born. And they're saying, well, how did you know? And they've told me that they would see themselves as a ball of light or an orb of light, sometimes blue, sometimes another color, and they would be observing the family and things that were happening in the family. And finally, before they're born, they would then become part of the physical that came and was born. And, I've heard this numerous times now. So again, it's saying that, that particularly with the starseeds, they've got this wonderful awareness, and many of the children being born from 2000 onwards, so I've been told by another starseed, are children that have full memory of who they are. And they are born with full memory. So this is from 2000 onwards. And the name she gave them was Homo noeticus. So this is one of the terms of the new human. But the starseeds have been coming in, I believe, for a long time. So having that kind of understanding, many are aware of being in a dual reality or a dual consciousness, part of them being human, part of them relating very closely to their star family. And sometimes that can cause conflict between the human part that's very emotional and maybe the extraterrestrial part that has awareness of the greater reality. And this can cause a great deal of confusion that, often is what causes the problems about being on this planet, because nothing on this planet seems to make sense to them. The way we live, the way a very materialistic society, a society that doesn't care about other people in many ways or just their own personal gain. This whole drive to see how much you can gain materially before you die. All those things make absolutely no sense to the starseed. They just don't want to be part of it. And the trouble with that is that to a certain extent, to survive on this planet, you've got to earn money, at the moment at least. You've got to be able to feed yourself, look after yourself. But it is very hard when none of the ways of earning money necessarily makes sense to these individuals that have these abilities. And the other thing they find difficult too is if they get aware of things that are going to happen in the future. This precognitive feeling of getting dreams where they're being shown things that may happen in 1 or 2 or 3 weeks or next day or whatever, can be devastating and really hard for them to deal with because they don't know where to go with it. They don't know how to handle it. And sometimes it's awful things. They may see someone who's a family friend and just know that that family friend will die next week or has an illness where they'll die or they'll have an accident or something. And it's extremely hard to deal with that knowledge when you meet someone or you got to know them and yet you know what might be ahead for them. And it is a very difficult thing to deal with. So that's another part of it. And the other part of it too is the downloads of information that one little girl called knowledge bombs in her head. And this is happening with many of the children. They get fed concepts, information, huge amounts of downloads, which are like compressed files of information that, some of it they can translate already. Some seem to be time locked. And with this information, they find that they have an understanding of advanced physics or an understanding of the origin of the species or an understanding of universal spirituality. So when they go to school or they go to uni, they already have a lot of the answers, but they may not fit in with the paradigm. They may not actually fit in with what they're being taught at university or being taught at school. I mean, the numbers of people that have said to me at school, they've argued with the religious teacher who's trying to teach them a religion and saying that's not true, or trying to teach them about the origin of the species and saying, well, that's not true either. So they're in conflict with those trying to teach them because they know through these downloads or through this intrinsic knowledge within them, that's rubbish. And the hassle and the problems that cause can be absolutely huge. So those are some of the other things. There are others that I can continue to go with. Also aware of seeing things that other people can't see. For example, orbs of light floating around. Or I remember one gentleman saying, Mary, sometimes when you're talking, I see this blue orb of light above your head. What's it doing there? What does it mean? Why am I seeing it? And then they'll see forms, non-physical forms floating about, for example, this kind of thing. They may be aware of just blinks of light around them that they feel that is telling them there's a presence or something or other as well. All these kinds of things seem to be enhanced the more they have these encounters or those experiences with the different intelligences they're interacting with. And the more that they become comfortable with that or learn to accept it, the more then they seem to open up and get more understanding. And one of my answers when they say, what should I do about this, Mary? What does it mean? I said, this is now for you to start asking questions. And this is, when you get something like that happening, see if you can, just ask the question to that part of you that knows, or if you feel a presence in the room, ask them questions. Say, who are you? Why are you interacting with me? And see what comes into your mind, because that's the way they work. And the less fearful you are, the more that communication will flow, and you will get more understanding of what some of these things mean, because on some level you do know. And then we go into the physical effects. The difference, the feeling of difference where you can't relate to what other people seem to find important or interesting or whatever, is to first of all learn to accept that you are different, and that's okay. That there's nothing wrong with being different. And if other people judge you as different, well, that's their problem. It doesn't have to be your problem. And by accepting that difference and accepting that you see the world in a different way actually can help you manage it, rather than fighting it and trying to fit into the box that they want you to fit into to be so-called normal. Don't even try. I mean, you still have to operate on this planet, this third dimensional planet, and you've got to still, manage to look after yourself and earn a living and all those things. But just accept that difference doesn't have to be a problem. The important thing with that difference is when you accept it, and also there are people out there that will be feeling exactly the same as you, and they're all over the globe, that you are not unique in that way, that this is the one thing that a lot of people are, don't talk about it because they're fearful of being seen as different. Well, you don't have to share that with everyone, but there are people on this planet that actually are like you. And if you want to feel more connected and accept your difference as being okay, find some others that feel exactly the same as you do. And this is part of what my work has been, is connecting people around the globe that feel the same things. They've always felt different. They felt they're here to do something, that they want to do something positive in the world, and they want to use that difference in a positive way. So the first thing is acceptance of it, and not fighting it, and not having to prove yourself to anyone, because you don't. Nobody has to prove themselves. And with that acceptance, you're changing your frequency to one where you can actually work with that difference, and actually with that too, connect with others so that you can get a better sense of support, less isolation, less feelings of, I've got to fit in, because you really don't have to fit in. You can still operate on this world and not fit in with the norm and be okay. And with that acceptance and that feeling of okay, you will just continue to open up and become all you can be, which is what I think we're all here to do. I think the most important thing is to realize that despite the fact that many people understandably are very concerned about the state of planet Earth and what's happening on this planet, it is in chaos, as most people would agree, at the moment, even more so than ever before. It's almost a feeling like very hard to maintain hope that there's a good future for humanity when it seems like we're destroying our planet, or at least those that are greedy and using power to control this planet and to control us, within that environment, that it seems like it's almost hopeless to manage to change or turn things around. And I think it's really important to understand that these children that have been, and starseeds that have been coming in over the last, I reckon probably nearer 100 years, perhaps, each generation becoming more aware, more consciously aware, should I say, of their superconscious selves and their connections. What is wonderful about that is that they have the skills, and they have told me they've come from many parts of the cosmos with skills to assist in putting planet Earth back into a healthy place again, so that we actually have a future as a species. And this is being brought about by this generational, I believe, upgrade of humanity into the awareness we need to understand how we operate as a species, as a consciousness connected to our star origins. And with that, this awareness then is how we can heal and move forward in a way where we actually raise not only what they call our frequency, but our awareness to a point where we can interact with our cosmic neighbors, our star neighbors and star families. And the children are actually going to be our teachers. And that is a very hard thing for humans to accept, that in fact, although we will still be looking after these children in terms of their human container or physical body, they will be teaching us. And they will be teaching us how the matrix or the multidimensional reality works. And the main thing with that is that if we listen to these children and we actually hear their what they have to tell us, we can turn everything around in a way that I don't think we can even conceive at the moment. These children are aware of what we need to do to heal this planet and to heal ourselves as a species, to understand our potential. But as this young 9-year-old girl told me, she said, Mary, human beings don't realize how amazing they really are, but they've got to believe it first. So we've got to get past the old programs, the old programming that says, you know, that we're not good enough, or we can't do things, or this is impossible for us to change because, you know, the ones in power have got all the power. They've only got power because we give it to them. They've only got power because we're fearful, because they have increased the programming of fear. If you can transcend that fear and transcend the messages that are going on those lower frequencies, and we go into another frequency and realize exactly what we're capable of, then none of that matters anymore, because we will not be subject to it. We will not be controlled by it. And this is what the children are telling us. They're saying we can do this, that we don't have to be part of that old mandate anymore, that there is the bridge now to the new paradigm, and they're part of the way of helping us, because they can tell when things aren't true. They can tell the lies. A lot of them are very telepathically aware. They're able to show us how to heal and to use our consciousness to become connected. And that I believe we all have the ability to travel, to bilocate, to use our vehicle in a light form to go to other places. This isn't science fiction. This is what consciousness can do, and remote viewing, astral traveling is just a small part of what we're capable of. And we really can travel the stars. And I think the children are the light at the end of the tunnel that are helping us now to transcend from one paradigm, the old limited one, to absolute freedom. And I think that's the most important thing I'd like to convey with what I've said today. It's an absolute pleasure, Belinda. Thank you so much. And that's probably very much your mandate. Part of your mission is to do that and be part of that whole movement of empowering people through your information.